Good to see you in person.
Oh, wonderful. Now, what does this Doing Business Report 2014 really highlight?
It highlights a couple of things. I think one's got to step backwards and say, why is it being done? I think it's being done with the view to trying to determine which countries are better environments for people to start up businesses and for investors to invest in. Mm-hmm. And I think a number of factors were taken into consideration. In fact, they rate countries on about 10 factors.
Yes.
How easy or how difficult is it to start a business? How do you deal with construction permits? How difficult is it to register bonds of a property? A whole range of other factors. We did really well, I think, right? We were rated 41st out of 189 countries surveyed. Now, some people may argue that's not good enough, and they may be right, because we probably have the 30th or 40th largest economy in the world. So we should do better than 41st. Mm-hmm. But we did really well in a couple of areas. I think we, certainly when it comes to dealing with construction permits, we do pretty well. When it comes to getting credit, we are ranked at about 28th. A little bit worse than we were last year, we were at 24. But it's easier to get credit now, certainly in South Africa, and the hurdles are a bit lower than it was a year ago. So there are a couple of areas where we've improved considerably. Some people argue again, 41st is not good enough. I think we're doing pretty well.
But what are some of the key areas and constraints that we have in this country as SMEs? Because people always talk about red tape that's hampering them to do business.
I think that's the challenge. On the one hand, we must be super critical of ourselves. And sometimes we err on the side of being very critical, and we self-flagellate quite a bit. But there are some very beautiful success stories. If you're going to start a business, one of the things you're going to have to do is register with the company's office. Mm-hmm. Let's say it's a corporate. You may certainly be required to meet certain forms of legislation, whether it be environmental or otherwise. In fact, a recent survey has indicated there are about 45 different pieces of legislation you might have to comply with before you can start a business. Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty daunting for most people. Mm-hmm. But there have been some successes. Let's take the companies or an intellectual property office, or SIPs as they are called in this day and age.
Before CIPRO, right?
Before CIPRO. We did an exercise not so long ago, in the last couple of weeks, where we assessed how long it takes you to get all the necessary approvals in place up until the day on which you have the paperwork to say you are now registered. It took all of 4 days. That's pretty brilliant. Mm-hmm. Now, we didn't do it ourselves, though. Mm-hmm. We got an expert to do it on our behalf. And I think therein lies some of the message for small and medium businesses. Most entrepreneurs are not in the habit of starting businesses on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. There are people out there who specialize in it. Right? Of course, you're going to have to pay them a fee for that. Mm-hmm. But because they do it on a daily basis, they know all the nooks and crannies that they have to navigate through in order to get your business registered as quickly as possible. In our case, it took 4 days. It didn't cost a nominal rate. It cost less than 1,500 Rand. So if you hire somebody who's really good at doing this, who does it on a daily basis, you may be able to navigate the registration process. You could say the same for most other pieces of legislation as well. Mm-hmm. So we are not that bad. I think the survey clearly indicates that. Do we have room for improvement? Of course we have. Have we slipped in areas? Yes, we have. We've not slipped in as much as other countries have improved. Mm-hmm. And I think therein lies the answer. We live in a global village. We compete as a destination with other countries for investment. We also need to create an environment not only for foreign investors to invest here, but for local entrepreneurs to take on the task of creating businesses so that we can reduce unemployment and grow this economy. And I think we have to improve faster than other countries if we are going to be that destination for both foreign and local investors to set up businesses.
But what are some of the gaps that need to be tightened when it comes to tightening those between financial institutions and aspiring entrepreneurs?
If you ask any entrepreneur out there, Elvis, and you've done many shows on this on the radio certainly, because you've asked me similar questions in the past, is very often you ask an entrepreneur, what is the single biggest obstacle to you setting up in business? And they will often argue it's access to finance.
Yes.
I would argue maybe that is the case, but I think there's a bigger problem. The bigger problem is communication. I don't think that people who sit on pots of money, whether they be banks or investors for that matter, they communicate really well what their criteria are for dishing out funding to entrepreneurs. By the same token, I think many entrepreneurs, since they are human beings, they choose the easy way out. So they don't necessarily do their homework that's required to find out whom should they be approaching in order to obtain funding. And I think there needs a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of money out there, right? And I think money is not the issue. Our big challenge is we need to get a lot of South Africans out there, especially young South Africans, to come up with ideas which can be turned into businesses. We need a lot of mentorship, and most people don't think they need that, but certainly in the world of finance, we think there's a pressing need for that. And then, of course, financiers have to come to the table. And equally importantly, government needs to figure out a way in which it can reduce the red tape. There's been a lot of legislation passed. Sometimes I worry that we don't do a sort of a sensitivity analysis to indicate what impact is this legislation going to have on the lives of people. In this case, what impact is it going to have on the lives of entrepreneurs? And I think I'm almost inclined to say we've got enough legislation. We almost need to have a moratorium on legislation now and assess what we've got and determine whether those are hindering entrepreneurs or they are encouraging entrepreneurship. And I think therein lies the answer.
And in Business Partners Limited, do you then assist entrepreneurs and SMEs to grow their businesses as well?
We do many things, but our service offering is threefold. We provide people with risk finance, money at risk. We provide entrepreneurs with mentorship or technical assistance, and we also provide them with business premises from which they can operate. And we think that's a pretty comprehensive bag of the things that an entrepreneur requires if they want to run a formal business. And I think the most important part for us is by being prepared to take risk, we lower the barriers that's often in place. The barriers insofar as security or collateral or owner's equity is concerned. We, unlike traditional financiers, would be willing to live with less than 1 times collateral cover.
Yes.
We are willing to live with less than 40% owner's equity, which is what bankers would require. And because we do that, we therefore make it accessible to entrepreneurs who can't meet those very, very high burdens that traditional financiers place in front of them.
I can tell immediately there's a number of SMEs out there looking for your business.
We hope so.
Nazeem, that's where we got to leave it. That was Nazeem Martin, the MD of Business Partners Limited, and telling us a little bit more and giving you some